Welcome to Mental Health Monday. My name is Mick Coyle. Coming up on the programme this week.
Evelyn, where to start? Evelyn was infectious with her laugh and had the most beautiful smile. Evelyn, when she was unwell, would say to us that she didn't want other people going through what she was going through. Her kindness coming through again, she experienced things that she just didn't want anyone else to go through. As a parent, you're not equipped unless someone helps equip you. I'm not shocked by those statistics that the parents don't know what to say because the education just isn't there.
The home of the UK's conversation about mental health. Welcome to Mental Health Monday. My name's Mick. It's great to have you and with us once again for another conversation. Thank you to everyone who is hitting subscribe to the podcast. That's always great to see those numbers going up as well. For people who are tuning in via various different forms, and it's often things like YouTube, which is a new way that people are now getting involved in the podcast. That's fantastic. However you're joining the conversation here at Mental Health Monday, you are always welcome. What we try and do here is we normalise conversations about mental health. We talk about important issues and we signpost people to support and what that support is, where it's available, practical steps that hopefully will make a difference. That's exactly what we're going to be doing today with a conversation about young suicide. Now, the team at the Campaign Against Living Miserably, aka C.A.R.E, have got a new survey out, and it's really interesting that survey says, with a focus on young people, that 65% of adults say they wouldn't feel confident about where to turn for practical support should they need to support a young person with suicidal thoughts. Now, the C.A.R.E team did the incredible Missed Birthdays campaign and have an ongoing campaign to raise awareness of the number of young people whose lives have been lost to suicide in the last decade. Those numbers, 6,929. But each of those numbers, each of those statistics, a person, a lived experience, a family in grief, and a family maybe with questions, looking for hope, looking for answers, and hoping, trying their best to put themselves out in the world to encourage other people to open up so that they don't have to join these statistics, and we can start to bring suicide numbers across all age groups down. Now, one of the families who do incredible work in this particular field are the Swifts. Jack and Jenni, who are going to be joining us on the podcast today. Now, they've been sharing the story of their daughter Evelyn as part of C.A.R.E's Missed Birthday campaign. Now, Evelyn died at the age of 15. She took her own life. And Jenni and Jack are sharing her story to talk about what they've gone through, but also to highlight some of the key issues that are coming up as part of this new survey from C.A.R.E as to why this is such an important conversation, the lessons that they've been learning, and the reasons why they're so passionate about speaking out about this particular issue. Now, it's not just about talking about the issue. That's never enough, is it? Of course, it's about signposting people to support, and that's why Jack and Jenni have been absolutely brilliant in sharing their story and highlighting the work of C.A.R.E in this space, because C.A.R.E have got a care kit, which is an online resource which you can go to if you need practical steps to take to help and support someone who's really struggling with their mental health or going through a crisis. That care kit is available through their website. I will put a link to it in the podcast notes so you can have a look at it. It's not brain surgery by any stretch. It's simple advice, and I would urge you, if you just get a few minutes, to click on that link, have a read through and see if you're equipped to deal with that, or if the things you need to do to make yourself available to be equipped for that, because it could save a life. And I think by Jack and Jenni sharing the story of Evelyn, they can save lives and will save lives as well, which is why I'm so pleased to be able to share their story. The podcast notes will contain a link to the C.A.R.E Care Kit. Thank you to Jack and to Jenni for sharing Evelyn's story and their own journey through this as well. And I started by asking Jenni what Evelyn was like.
Evelyn, where to start? Evelyn was infectious with her laugh and had the most beautiful smile. And as a person, she was just kind. That's just who she was through and through. She had a really strong moral compass and sense of justice, a fiery sense of justice, and always looking out for the underdog, really. She always wanted to make other people smile. So whether that would be her being silly to bring a smile to someone's face, or baking a cake for them, or she always wanted to make other people happy and to bring joy to them, really. when she got a little bit older, she was into, well, she was always into baking, but she got so good at it. She started up her own little business from home and would make cakes for friends and family, and she had 2 grannies that were brilliant at baking and got all her skills from them, and it kind of missed a generation with me, I think. Yeah, and when she got older, I think her sense of humour, partly because of her illness, partly probably in spite of her illness, she had a really dry sense of humour. Um, and when there were some very difficult times, some very dark times, we still managed to find humour in the darkest situations.
There's a video that you guys have shared alongside Calm, which shows Evelyn through her birthdays, and it's one of those videos where, my heart breaks to see it because I've got a 10-year-old daughter now, and I've got those exact same videos on my phone that it'll regularly come up as a memory, and I'll watch that. Um, and then obviously there's the line at the end that expresses, Evelyn's story and the fact she didn't reach her 16th birthday. You became part of a club that no parent wants to be part of. And I
Yeah.
wonder, at what point, Jenny, did you realize that actually you weren't alone in that club? And something which must feel so isolating. Was there a stage at which you started to think, actually, we're not the only ones who've experienced this?
I think there's different stages for us. When Evelyn was unwell with her mental health, we had that kind of moment of realizing we weren't alone. For a long time, it felt really isolating. We didn't know anyone else that had been through anything similar or, was supporting their child in the same way. Um, and then we found different organizations that helped. Um, and yeah, that recognition that we weren't alone was just huge. And then following Evelyn's death, I think our kind of immediate thought was, we really appreciated this peer support that we'd found elsewhere during her illness. So what is there out there like that for us in this situation? Because we knew that we wouldn't be alone. It's just trying to find other people that are sadly in a similar situation.
And, the stats speak for themselves, almost 7,000 young lives lost in the last decade. Tragic numbers there. And I think anyone would completely understand if a parent decided that they almost want to sort of turn in on themselves, look out for themselves within that close family circle. But you've decided to sort of share Evelyn's story and to put those images out and put that video out as well. Was there a sense of mission about that? Was there something about your experience that made you think we've got to try and break something down here as a result of our story?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Evelyn, when she was unwell, would say to us that she didn't want other people going through what she was going through. Her kindness coming through again, she experienced things that she just didn't want anyone else to go through. And for us, that feels like our driving force now, that we want to prevent other young people experiencing what Evelyn experienced. And we want to prevent other families going through the heartbreak that we're going through now.
When you look at the survey results as well, 65% of parents don't know where to get help. So that idea that there are two-thirds of parents who, if they were in that sort of circumstance or experienced the experience that you'd gone through, they wouldn't know where to turn, or if they had a young person in their family who was expressing thoughts and feelings and they didn't know what that's a huge knowledge gap, isn't it? That's a real big knowledge gap in education for an issue which is so, so important.
But it's true though, isn't it? I mean, when Evelyn was first struggling, I didn't use the word suicide with her. I didn't ask her, and use that word. We spoke about dark thoughts and difficult emotions. I was scared to use the word suicide because I thought I'd be planting the idea in her head. But when we know now that that's just not the case, talking about suicide prevents suicide. Um, Further down Evelyn's journey, she was unwell for quite some time, but, um, with that education and that support, I was able to better support her and have more open conversations, and we grew closer again as a result of that, despite her, really, really difficult illness. But as a parent, you're not equipped unless someone helps equip you. And so I'm not shocked by those statistics that the parents don't know what to say because the education just isn't there. But we talk, to our young people about sex and drugs, and we educate them on the risks. But suicide is the biggest risk to their life, and we don't talk to them about it, and we don't skill them.
There's another stat that stands out as well from this YouGov poll through C.A.R.E, which is that 62% of those who were surveyed said that young people face more difficult challenges now than generations before. So they're hinting that we know, as adults, we know that times are difficult. We know that times are more difficult than things were for us when we were growing up, and we know about the challenges that we faced as well. It speaks, doesn't it, of an unspoken knowledge that we know that young people are facing a really difficult time, and yet when it comes down to it, two-thirds wouldn't know who to turn to or where to go. And I know people sort of laugh now about that. If you broke your leg, you'd know to go to A&E. But there's a truth to that, isn't there, about simple messages of don't talk to strangers, only cross when the green man appears, and so on and so forth. If you're having thoughts or feeling of suicide, there isn't an automatic thing that comes into your brain that kicks in that says, so therefore I need to do this. Because we've not had that same sort of, call it indoctrination or whatever, that cultural understanding about what you can do and where you can turn to.
Yeah, and we have, generations of, you just get on and do it and, stop being so weak and pull your socks up. And that's just not the case, is it? Young people are dealing with much more difficult situations than we were, when we were younger. Technology has advanced so much. They're coming up against AI, they've got all the social media, they're not able to switch off 24/7. It's a completely different world that they're living in and trying to navigate. So we need to do something about that.
I'm going to bring Jack into the conversation in just a moment. But in terms of, Jenny, just in terms of what's at stake, if you like, for parents who are even hearing this story, hearing about the fact that parents don't know where to turn or what to do, and they're thinking, well, I don't need that information. I don't need to know about that stuff because it's not something that I'm currently experiencing. What would you say to them to sort of urge them to get smart around these, to turn that, to be more proactive, if you like, in terms of your education?
That you never know when you might need it at all. Um, as I said about, teaching about sex and drugs, they're not specific issues at that moment in your life, but you learn about them and you learn about the risks and you learn about how to talk about them. You don't need first aid at a crisis in that, medical emergency time, do you? But you learn those skills so that at some point in life you might need them. And it's the same with talking about suicide and talking about mental health. At some point you may need those skills, and it's better to equip yourself now. And we hope that that's, one of the things with this film is that it resonates with people that, you said you related to it and the family films that you have at home. And we just hope that people watch it can see themselves with it and recognize that suicide can happen to anyone, and it's better to equip yourself with those skills.
No, absolutely. Ginny, thank you so much for sharing your story. Let's bring Jack into the conversation if we can. Jack, thank you for your time. Really appreciate you speaking to us as well. I think Jenny set out very eloquently sort of the stakes and how high the stakes are. Your understanding of those stakes must be have been enhanced significantly given your experience with Evelyn and beyond that as well. How important is it to you now, Jack, to be able to share Evelyn's story and for people to see images like those of Evelyn so that you can bring this conversation to the fore?
Well, it's very important. But kind of echoing sort of Jenny's words really, and also what you said yourself really about kind of resonating. It can unfortunately happen to to anyone. There's a lot of people who think that maybe for a young person to take their own life, they must have had a difficult kind of Evelyn came from a loving family, and still had issues, and that's okay. And like the word suicide isn't it shouldn't be a taboo word anymore. It's not a dirty word. And I think Jenny said it earlier on as well, like talking about suicide won't cause it, like, but it might help prevent it. And so, yeah, it's really important. It's really important.
Was that a big shift for you personally, Jack? Being told that mentioning suicide won't make someone start thinking about suicide. I know it's one of those things now which has become, certainly the last 3 to 4 years, has become a much wider conversation that are you feeling suicidal is a positive question to ask rather than some sort of negative or implanting question into somebody's mind. That was certainly a big shift for me when I heard that. When you were going through it though, that must have been huge in terms of just your mindset.
Yeah, I think, look, I think it was a big shift. I'd never really thought about it too much personally myself anyway. There is an older generation where it was slightly taboo, and then now it's not. And but we still have that kind of hangover slightly of people, still, or like people might kind of whisper it, "Oh, committed suicide." It's like as opposed, even that terminology, committed suicide, is outdated. Like like we feel really strongly about how we don't want Evelyn's story to be kind of labeled as her committing suicide because she didn't commit a crime. It's not. It's not a crime. She died by suicide, or she took her own life, or what. The cause of death was suicide. So there's a lot of stigma attached, and I think it was a big shift for me personally. But also, like we had a little kind of mantra, if you like when Evelyn was really poorly, which was well, like when you know better, you do better. And so, we were constantly trying to learn about how to help and how to deal with this kind of stuff when she was poorly. Um, and if we can help people know a bit better, then maybe they can also do a bit better as well.
Often, Jack, these situations are very complex because of the nature of sort of maybe some of the illness that's involved or so on and so forth. But one of the things that strikes me about something like the Calm Care Kit is the relative simplicity of it. You don't have to be a brain surgeon or have an experience of having gone through something yourself to look at that care kit and understand what those 4 simple points are, that the acronym CARE,
Yeah.
and have that in the locker, and have that even if it's something that you then forget, just to remember that it's there when you need to come back to it. That's a simple thing that we can do, without having to, go and take a degree in psychotherapy or something like that.
Yeah, it is. And I think it it's doable for a lot of people, and hopefully every single adult who comes into contact with young people. Like, like I work in schools and I come into contact with young people all the time, but actually just like parents and carers, anybody, it's doable. As you say, you don't need a psychology degree or, like it's just it's doable. And then like the last one, expert help. Like actually if it is getting too difficult, go and get some expert help. But these are things that you can do, and yeah, it's accessible.
Um, In terms of the sort of the bigger picture, and we're talking about that as a service and a resource which is available from the Calm team, and it's a brilliant resource, and we'll make sure there are plenty of links of it for people to click on. There's a part of this survey which looks about whether or not people feel like the government should do more, or authorities should be doing more, that this should be a wider conversation. 52% believe the government should do more to prevent young suicide, whether the other 48% believe the government is currently doing enough, or simply didn't know enough to be able to answer the question. That's not absolutely clear, but it speaks, doesn't it, of the majority of people thinking, well, there must be something that we can do. What for you is it, Jack? Are there things? Is there a thing the government could do or the authorities could do that would make a genuine difference?
Um, I'm not sure there's a thing. I think, and as well, like with mental health, it's so very complex. You made the analogy about a broken leg going to A&E earlier on, and if somebody breaks their leg, like obviously depending on the break, there's a way to fix that, or there's a few ways they can fix it, but like it's a broken leg, or like I had to have my kidney removed a few years ago, and that was like relatively, you know, relatively common procedure, and like whether I got mental health issues or not, it was the same. Whereas with mental health, it's all individual. So in terms of there being a thing, I think there isn't one thing anybody can do, but I think things like the care kit and things like the three dads are doing some work at the minute with Papyrus, another charity who is trying to get it onto the school curriculum. So there's lots of different angles of how to actually get these conversations going. I think, like, as well on a personal point, there is a stigma around mental health, uh, and like we were told by one of Evelyn's leading child psychologists that it's the same level of specialism as oncology, as cancer, and yet the amount of money being, in terms of cancer research is huge in comparison to mental health research, and like we as a family have experience of the cancer side of it too, and I'm not begrudging any penny of that. But if it's the same level of specialism, it's just that there's a stigma attached there. So I think there needs to be like more of a wraparound approach with all kinds of different organisations. I don't think there's a thing. Sorry, that's not a simple answer, but I don't think there's a thing. I think there's like come at it from lots of different sides, and lots of different angles because it's so complex.
What advice then would you give to somebody who maybe has a child who's experiencing difficulties at the moment, or even maybe that they're bereaved themselves and they're in that world where they don't quite know where to turn, or there's not a message which springs to mind? What would you say to them that might guide them through the next steps?
Oh, well, first of all, I would say that nobody can tell you how to grieve. If you are another, sadly sort of grieving parent, nobody can tell you how to do that. So don't kind of feel like you owe people an explanation. I think if people are struggling, there is help out there. It can be quite thinly spread. There's lots of organisations, and I think hopefully they'll all try to work together a little bit more soon. There's organisations like C.A.R.E who can offer support, and there's others too. But there is help out there, and don't lose hope. Is the main thing. I think just don't lose hope.
And in terms of the care kit, do you think there's a chance that will save lives?
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's bring Jenni back into the conversation. Jenni, thank you for sort of sharing your story and being so open, and to you and Jack for talking about Evelyn. One of the things that we touched on, cancer funding and things like that, which are now available. I think a big part of that is because society decided to almost like take a stand on things like breast cancer, that you saw people go on these marches and the race for life, and women would wear, a bra on the outside at their top. It became sort of almost like a society thing that people said that this isn't good enough anymore. We need to make a change. Could we do that with young suicide, do you think? Do you think there's enough support within the community that you're part of now to step forth and to engage in a community who I think would be absolutely willing to engage with that, if we can break down some of that stigma and that taboo that maybe exists?
I think so, yeah. I think going forward, there's absolutely the recognition that young people are struggling and that we need to be doing more as a society. And whether that concentrates solely on suicide or actually the wider issues of mental health, more largely. But there are things that we can be doing. And, you asked Jack what, if we could ask the government to do something, what would we do? In my mind, there's several things. And one of them is having, something like the Calm Kit in schools, teaching young people about suicide and mental health, how to protect themselves if they have these thoughts, but also how to support others if they disclose that they're experiencing suicidal thoughts. And in something from our experience is that within social care and healthcare, there is no mandatory mental health or suicide prevention training. So if someone's struggling and there's no out of hours support, the NHS website says take the young person to A&E. A&E staff do not have mandatory training on mental health or suicide prevention. And so our experiences are not great in that regard, and the support that Evelyn received or didn't receive.
No, sure. I appreciate that. And thank you for that response. Jack, I apologise for springing that question upon you. I thought you gave a very eloquent response as well, but I think they both complement each other. Jack and Jenny, thank you so much for your time. Thank you, and I'll say this on behalf of as a parent, for sharing that video that you've shared of Evelyn as well. I think it's going to have a huge impact as well. I'm sure Evelyn would be very proud of what her parents are doing now and the work that they're doing as well. We'll put links as well to the C.A.R.E kit in the work that we do as well, so that people can see that and share that around too. But thank you for sharing your time today.
Thank you very much.
Jenni and Jack Swift there talking about Evelyn, and always moving to hear families share stories of those that they've lost, but particularly when it comes with now that sense of mission. That idea that there are things you can do. And the first things you can do, head to the C.A.R.E website and check out their C.A.R.E kit. I've got a link to that in the podcast notes. The government, of course, they say they're taking action. I've got a statement from them off the back of this survey. They say it's the government's mission to reduce the lives lost to suicide, giving mental health the attention and focus it deserves. As part of this, they say, we will address the causes of suicide and take action to improve children and young people's mental health. As we shift from focus to prevention, we will recruit an extra 8,500 adult and child mental health staff, modernise the Mental Health Act, and provide access to mental health support in every school. That's the government's statement, which they've sent through to Mental Health Monday. Don't forget, the C.A.R.E website has got the C.A.R.E kit. I'll put a link in the podcast notes. You can also get local services near where you are on the Hub of Hope, hubofhope.co.uk. The Samaritans on 116 123. You can text SHOUT to 85258. And of course, if there is an emergency and someone's life is at stake, the number you can call, as ever, is 999. We'll be back next week with more from Mental Health Monday.